How's everybody doing tonight? Oh, I think I'm starting to agree with Chris. I might need to start a little earlier. Shout out to Chris Whitlock. Thanks for everybody for joining me. Shout out to Dwight. Drop the link if he wants to come up and share the privacy screen. Because he's the up and coming 40 under 40. Doing big things. Anybody could come up, but shout out to Dwight. I know he likes his privacy. Give me 1 second. I gotta cut off my little heater. He be over here baking. I'm trying to figure out why I'm so hard. Give me 1 second. Oh man, had a rough day. Gotta get it together. Shout out to Space Taco, GRC Mafia. Shout out to Dwight. Drop the link if he wants to come up. No pressure. I know the privacy thing is him more than me. Space Taco on the team replay. I feel you. I'm not feeling the best either. I don't know if it was the 7 inches of snow we got in Indiana. I hope you feel better, Space Taco. Abdul Khan, GRC Mafia. Shout out to Chris Whitlock. Go check him out on Study GRC. I'm over there a lot. My man before the billions in the house. Shout out to Restream. They got a lot of nice beats. You see it there. Personal identifiable information processing and transparency family. Woo, that's a lot. Shout out to that. So basically, it's the privacy family. Shout out to my man for joining me. Up and coming privacy guru in the house. What's up?
What's going on?
Trying to make it, man. PBO struggling. I think he had a bad day. I'm talking to the third person like I'm an athlete. It's all right, though. Let's see. I was waiting on the RG lights to start a raid. Yeah, shout out to Restream. They got a lot of flows for you. So shout out to Ty. Talk to my man today. All good, all good. Let's see you there. Oh, shout out to Chris for joining me. How are you doing, Mr. Whitlock in the house?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. It's really weird to be on this side of the table now. It looks so much different.
You used to running it. I understand. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I come on so many streams and panels now. It's like, I don't know. So it's funny. It's cool, especially when people start interviewing you. I've probably been interviewed about 25 times. So it really gets kind of different. So let's go and get started. Like I said, I'm struggling already. You see it, the PII, this basically is the new privacy security family. They changed the name. So I think it's right up to Dwight and Chris Whitlock since they do their privacy. When y'all do your privacy, Tuesday at
11 a.m. Central.
Yep.
Yeah, noon Eastern.
Yep, noon Eastern. I'm on Eastern, but shout out. So definitely check them out. They're doing great things in the privacy area. I'm sticking my toe in privacy. So I think that area is just getting more and more, I don't want to say popular, but I think CCPA and GDPR is getting it started. So let's see. Chris told me don't read this anymore. Then you see it here, the personal identifiable privacy and transparency family PT. You see them right there. Chris told me don't read them anymore. It's boring, but it's all good. PBO alerted. So let's start off with PT2, identification and authentication. I'll determine and document the RC 613 section. I need to change that. That's the state or federal privacy section. That's specifically for the IRS, but DOD has their PRI section. So restrict the access to personal identifier information to to only that which is authorized to that. And I think we talked a little bit about that today on Chris's stream. Need to know least privileges. You only need authorization. A friend of mine called me. We were just talking about that. They had a person walking around that was in a restricted area, and I said, from a cybersecurity perspective, that's not good because they could be looking at PII, they could be looking at IRS or DOD information. So when you have people walking around that's not supposed to be there from a cybersecurity and privacy perspective, that's not good. Then the other part of that is, what's your agencies or organizational procedures? Long story short, at DOD, we had a inspector general. Inspector General of the Department of Revenue can call the state police. So that's how we handle people walking in this section. What's your thoughts on that, Dwight?
For me, I guess this is kind of gets back to access control, and I'm looking for a way to automate this. I want to see this coming up as something that's continuously monitored. I'm not having to go in and really check it unless it's it's up for review. So
No.
I'm hoping that I'm working somewhere where they're on top of it, and they got a place that a system that really just goes in and verify Okta, whatever, just verifies like, hey, whoever's got access to this particular database or this particular information, that we always have some vision on that, not just when it comes to audit time.
No, that's good. What's your thoughts on it, Chris? I'll give each one of y'all take.
Yeah, I mean, this also makes me think of like least privilege as well, especially like some of the businesses I've worked at. Yeah, when you're looking at that personally identifiable information.
Yeah, and I think both of y'all hit on it, and there was two parts to that, like you said. What's your technology? What's your automation, right? Your access control. Dr. Ozier's favorite one, you got to have MFA or you don't have anything at all, right? So, but definitely before you MFA. But I think the part there from a privacy perspective, we were working on that. I think sometimes we're lazy and we just give people access to stuff they don't need. And what screen should you have? And if you give them a screen, do they need SSN on there or should you obfuscate it, right? So everybody's doing work on a client don't need to see the SSN, right? So that should show the last four, or really just start out unless they need to see it for, I think you was bringing up on your stream, right? Right to process, or some reason you need that data to process it. So I think that's the next step. Security, we need the security, but the next step is, do you really need to see it even if you can get to it, right? So I think that's kind of the next step from security to privacy. So I think
then you're kind of getting to the realm of like masking or tokenization or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So, what is that? Shout out to Before the Billions. Got to have the MFA. Yeah, so MFA now is, that should be out the book, but I still see people without MFA. We did Ticketmaster, right? They're $1 billion company that was doing MFA, right? So
Snowflake.
Right. But Ticketmaster didn't configure Snowflake, so I stopped saying Snowflake, right? Snowflake had it in their documentation, big as crap. Hey, you need MFA. Ticketmaster was like, nah, we good. We don't need MFA. That was incorrect. So let's keep rolling. So let's see. What's the next one? PT3, personal identified information processing. Identify and document the federal and state processing personal identifiable information. Describe the purpose in the privacy notes and policy of the organization. Restrict federal and state personally identified information only that has need to know. And I think that's what I was bringing up on the screen. Monitor changes processing personal identifier information and implement change control according with the federal state requirements. So I think that's the processing part. And I think y'all brought that up on your stream this morning, right? The processing, when can you use it? The big thing, and I don't think that the right to delete. So that means you got to track it through the whole pipeline. So once again, processing it, public privacy noticing in your policy, and restrict the federal information, restrict and monitor changes the processing personal identifiable information for change control according. I think the last one's for programming. So if you change something in the programming and it breaks up, or you get to see too much, you can actually roll back the change. What's your thought on that, Dwight?
This one kind of comes back to those impact assessments. So yeah, just making sure that you're catching those changes before they're already in the system, long before we see stuff like Apple got Siri listening to everybody, so it shouldn't take us 10 years to kind of correct that sort of thing. We should be on top of that. We should be catching that. We should be expecting, where our technology meets people's information and really kind of staying on top of that and making sure that we're having the team, delete that data as soon as it's not needed and we're restricting access to it. So we see that one in the news very often. So it's one to kind of pay attention to. And these assessments are getting more and more in your face. There's new privacy laws coming into play, even 5 just this month. So a lot of them are including requirements for you to include these assessments. So it's almost like I guess the security analogy would be like a sort of change management sort of thing. It's like, okay, now you want to do something different with this data. That's a risk, and it's going to need to come up, from our risk folks, and it's almost like a processing alert, like, hey, this is going on with our data now. We're doing something different with it, and here's what that means. Here's the risk related to it.
What's your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, first of all, it's kind of eye-opening because I honestly hadn't looked at the 53 enough to realize that they actually had privacy built into it. Considering it's for government systems, it's kind of unexpected.
Don't disrespect that 153, man. Don't disrespect the 53. Now go ahead. You can't just the
Yeah,
big
coming up
brother.
on
You
PBO
can't.
stream and just disrespecting it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I find this to be an extremely important control, not only because it's referencing for like the privacy notices and policies, which is very important, but then also monitoring those changes. And like I'm actually following this on my Trello board here. And when you start getting into like the enhancements, it gives you a lot more detail. And the discussion on this also mentions the entire information lifecycle. So monitoring the creation, the collection, the use, processing, storage, maintenance, and dissemination of that data. So the entire information lifecycle, which I think this is a very necessary control.
Yeah, you're right. And you talking about my advanced class when we go over the enhancements. We were just touching on the top. And the reason why is I was in a meeting and I thought of Dwight was this executive, it's been a while ago, said, these are all the data items we're collecting. I mean, it was quite a few. I said, sir, from a privacy perspective, should we collect all those data items? And he said exactly what I told Dwight he was going to say. We're going to monetize all of these. We're collecting every last one of them. So I was like, I saluted the flag. I was thinking of Dwight. I was like, yeah, he not listened to me, Dwight. And to be honest, Dwight said that so casually. I've never done a privacy impact, and I've never seen one done. I just think we're getting our toe into that, and I think it's starting to come up now. But once again, we're trying to be Facebook, so we try to monetize it. They believe since we're doing a security impact, that's gonna cover the risk, and they think that risk is gonna cover privacy, and it does not. I think it falls short of that because we never talk about the right to delete, the need to know how. We just like, oh, it's secure. We got MFA. We good to go.
You know where that's going to hit GRC folks in the face is when it comes up, when privacy finally gets entered on your risk register and you got to do something about it. We got so many like higher priority things, but when it does like finally come around, because that impact assessment is going to be an important control to say like, you're to, show that you're on top of it and be compliant with these laws. So when these laws come into effect, it's finally everybody's going to be talking about, these assessments, these privacy risk assessments or privacy impact assessments, whatever you want to call them.
No, you're 100% right. Now, I'm not saying you're right. I just don't see them. But two is, I remember when we had no security, then we got NIST, now we got CMC, now we got HIPAA, right? So I think it's growing into that now. I mean, we didn't really talk about risk. You assume if you were secure, that handled your risk, right? Now you got the whole RMF. So I think the next step coming, and I think the bigger companies are doing that, is the privacy standpoint. So I think those are, especially when you get those GDPR fines, right? So then I think those come in more into play. But now you're 100% right. I just think we're, as a industry, I think we're finally maturing more into privacy. So consent, y'all talked about that this morning. Implement federal and state processes for individuals to consent to processing of their personal identifiable information prior to collection that facilitate individuals' informed decision making. So, what's your thoughts on that, Daryl?
I guess you're talking to me, right?
Yeah, Dwight, my fault, man. I'm tired. I apologize. Just say Dwight, man. My fault. Just say Daryl.
I was trying to keep a straight face.
One of my best mentors is Daryl, and I'm tired. I apologize. Dwight, what's your thoughts on that? PBL gonna get it together, man.
Consent is a big one. I think the more, me and Chris did an episode on this because I feel like the more you know about consent, the more complicated you realize it is. It's really easy to get fatigued with consent. You're always requesting users to consent to something, and and as companies don't always act based on consent. So we still got a ways to go with consent. It's still a debate about how valuable it is, but we are seeing people look at it with more nuance and start to say like, hey, we shouldn't over rely on consent. We might need to make sure that we have other reasons to process folks data. So getting more complicated. So if this is new to you, I hope you jump in quick and we can discuss this a little bit more.
Chime in on that, Chris. I can get Chris's name right. I'll be messing the white name up. My bad. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Hey, at least you were, completely wrong. This is another really important control as well. I kind of want to look back. I mean, has the 53 always had this family group?
No, this is new. This came out with R5. They did real big on risk assessment, supply chain from the Consent Act, and the PII process for privacy. So once again, NIST is growing. Shout out to NIST. That's why I love 800-53. They getting better too. So go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
So C53 didn't even have any privacy family group until 2020.
They had an appendix. They had
They did. They did. It wasn't a family. It was a appendix, or I think they had a part of a subsection, but no, they brought it out right here though. Go ahead, Chris.
A footnote. Yeah. So I mean, this is an extremely important one. This is not only did we do a video on this, but I think this is also what relates to the average user the most, is that consent, because this is what most people see as privacy, is the consent forms. Yes, I agree to this. No, I do not. Or other now. I was just trying to dig into this a little bit more on the consent portion, because at least so far, I don't see like any particular requirements other than obtaining consent, rather than like, oh, you have to have it clear, like the GDPR says.
Look in there. I thought it was in the, you don't see it in the CE. You see it in control enhancements. I thought it was a few more things.
Yeah, that's what I'm skimming through right now. Okay. So they have like tailored consent, just-in-time consent.
I've never heard of that just-in-time consent. That was kind of new when I saw that. I was gonna dig in a little deeper, because for me, I'm learning a lot, because this is one of the newer families, and since y'all been touching on it, and once again, if you gave me your data, I think you consent. I can do anything I want to it, and that's incorrect. So I'm kind of learning a little bit. That just-in-time consent, I think we were talking about this in a bigger meeting a couple years ago, is like Dwight said, just because I get your data for health, and I drop your privacy video in the chat, just because I got it for health doesn't mean I can feed it to AI unless I ask for consent. But a lot of companies feel if I got your data And if you read their consent, and I've been in meetings with people, they said we need to make it broad as we can so we can use it for what we want, right? So, and I think right. So, and I look at people out, I be thinking, I don't think that's the intent of what the law is. But once again, businesses are trying to make money, so they know when they get their data, that's gold, and they can do it AI, machine learning. Then theoretically, they can sell your data to other third-party brokers and make money on but once again, Facebook, $1 billion companies by selling your data.
Yeah.
That just-in-time consent is one of my favorites. It gets, and again, you get a little weary on it, but even when your phone pops up and says, "Hey, something is still using your data. Do you still consent to that?" Or you're trying to do something new for that. You need to give up this data. That sort of thing. I think is a really probably a more effective way than clicking on something and saying, "Oh, I read 30 pages of this legal form."
Yeah, and I think that's the next step of privacy is asking consent multiple times if they're going to change the use of your data. I think a lot of people are trying to make it so broad that basically you consent to anything. I think that's what Facebook do. Their consent is so big, they're like, yeah, you give it to us, we can do anything we want with it, right? And GDPR goes, that's incorrect. You owe us 100 million for it. And Facebook goes, pocket change, homie, pocket change, right? So
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's just becoming more and more common. Like we talked about on our stream before, is more and more states are coming out with their own privacy laws as well. Because that's what's interesting is like the GDPR is for the whole EU because of their law system and so forth. But in the United States, I think it's more of a struggle, not only because A, it's the United States, but then B, the process is involved because the states are left to do it because there's not as much federal on the topic yet.
I think that's because the big
So,
companies are lobbying it. They stopping it on purpose, right? So I think
hey, I'm not. I don't have my tinfoil hat on yet, PBO.
I think that's by design. So that's my tinfoil hat. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Privacy notice. Provide notice to individuals about processing of personal identifiable information. Is available to individuals on first interacting with the organization and subsequently at the Fed or state. What's the frequency of that? Is it clear and easy to understand in plain English? That's a legal question, so I don't know how you decipher if it's easy to understand. Identify the authority that authorizes the process of personal identifiable information. So once you opt in, right, who's authorized that you can use it? And two is, did the person, like we talked about, give you consent for that particular thing? And I don't see privacy notice like I see you log into a government system, it says 5,000, 10,000 in federal crimes. I don't really see privacy in that notice yet. So what's your thought on that? Dwight?
Yeah, I don't. Thanks for getting the name right, but I don't.
I'm working on it.
I don't know how they do it in government systems, but this is, for privacy folks, this is like one of the first things you check, and it is the way that these enforcement agencies come in and they look at what you're doing. They're looking at your privacy notice compared to what your practices are. So even in some of these old cases where you're seeing these fines come out, they're talking about their privacy policy from 2002 or something, and saying this is what you said that you were doing with data and you weren't clear enough about it. Doesn't matter that in 2025 you got it up to date. What you did in the past affects people as well, and it might take years to process it. So this is something you want to have in line and continuously evaluate and make sure that it's hooked into upcoming changes. When we're updating systems and stuff like that, you're going back and looking at your privacy notice and making sure that that is up to date with what you're actually doing, what you've informed people to do, and all these new laws that are coming into effect.
What's your take on that, Chris?
Yeah. So like regarding the privacy notices on federal systems, I think one other important thing to note is that the federal government works with the public in a lot of different facets. And so I think that's where this would be maybe more applicable. rather than the employees as much. So, like identifies the authority that authorizes the processing of personally identifiable information as part of the PT5.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's like this also goes back to like the policies and procedures aspect of it as well.
So where's this
Clearly
private?
and easy to understand.
No, true. Where's the privacy notice at? Is that like a policy or procedure? Are we putting it on a click through?
That's the public one. The notice is going to be the public one.
That's what I was thinking. So it's on a click through that we'll read through and click through and
Yes,
look at it.
or posted easy in an easy, like, unconspicuous place, or conspicuously on your website, like easy to find place.
Yeah.
I have to go out there and look at that because I know a lot of websites, they have a compliance thing and they start listing out compliances. And I think maybe I saw privacy on there, but there's so many other documents or screens out there. It just seems like it gets buried out there. So that's kind of why I'm kind of a little perplexed. Where would I put that at? Right? Because a lot of times when you log in the government system, it comes up front. This is the jail time. This is the fine. So do I put it there or? But like I said, the consent is already big enough. So I mean, I don't think anybody's really reading it. So
In this case, I think this is, for I notice more for the public. Where your screens are going to come up. I think that's going to be like an onboarding issue, like you've agreed to the privacy policy, more internal sort of thing. Whereas the notice is going to be for the public on your website and all your programs and stuff.
you putting it on your click through with your consent stuff, or you think that's the second screen?
It, yeah, it will reference it. It might not be, the whole thing might not be there, but it'll say, look here for more about how we deal with your data.
No, I've seen those before. They're just so big, unless you like me, where I have to read that stuff. Like if I was doing a RFP or some kind of assessment over, because we're doing business. When I don't think most people read them, but I could be wrong. Like I said, I gotta read them a lot of times. Like I said, if I'm doing a third party assessment or something, and if I have to go through and start picking that stuff out. And usually I'm trying to pick out if we're violating something with it from a company perspective, right? Not a personal perspective. Let's get this question from AB while we rolling. I think AI and blockchain, how they impact transparency requirements. I've never seen blockchain used in real life. What's your thoughts on that, Dwight?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I can't touch it. I don't have any good examples of that either. But AI for sure, the transparency, whenever we talk AI governance, transparency is going to be one of those big things right up there with explainability. You're going to hear those a lot, and I think it's going to be a big year for AI governance.
Oh yeah, it's huge now. What's your thoughts on that, Chris?
Oh boy, where do I begin? There are so other uses for blockchain. Is that basically the question here?
No, I think he's asking how they may impact. I'm gonna chime in once you got finished some stuff about blockchain at a high level. But.
Yeah, AI and blockchain in regards to the impact on transparency requirements.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite understand utilizing AI and blockchain.
AB, drop in the chat a little more explanation. How I thought about it is blockchain. We talked about that because it's an immutable database, meaning when you put a record in, it can change. So for us, I was on a panel. We don't like the transparency of AI, so we want you to put the algorithm on the blockchain so it can be reviewed by a federal agency. We don't know if it's doing digital divide. We don't know if it's redlining. We don't know if it's the next Terminator, right? So we would like you to put your AI formula or what your algorithms are doing on a blockchain so it can be reviewed. We know some of that's probably IP, intellectual property, but the government, if somebody needs to look at it to figure out what it does, we were on there and we leaped out the window saying Tesla's gonna start doing facial recognition. If you're a felon, it's just gonna hit you with the car. So we just started leaping out there. I was on a weird panel. So that's how we thought about. We wanted to review the formulas and put them on blockchain as a mutable database and have AI experts, because you don't know if these financial algorithms, what they're doing, if it's a black swan event. They're so complicated. So that's how we were thinking about it from an AI and transparency issue. Oh, here you go, Chris. I need to track the origins of using the PI for audit trail. So I think he wants to use blockchain and use AI to kind of figure out where the PI is at in there to kind of for audit trails.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's some of the interesting stuff that blockchain can help with. And also, I think we're just going to see more and more of blockchain just integrated across the industry, actually. So if you look at CyberSeek, they keep track of like different metrics in the industry, and they have like an 80% increase in blockchain audit in the next 5 years, which I thought was absolutely insane. One key thing, though, too, is that blockchain is not always decentralized. I just wanted to throw that out there. You also have decentralized, centralized, and then distributed. So there's a couple different style ones. Like one example that I've seen before is utilizing blockchain just for the integrity of the file system. So keeping track of all changes, log files, the whole 9 yards, and making it to where it's not possible to change that for integrity purposes.
Yeah, we were shout out to AWS. They have a blockchain. I played with it for a year. We were doing financial contracts. So once you do them, they're immutable. So you have to do an addendum so you can actually try to follow them a little better. But so that was kind of the blockchain. Look to my own question. I now ran into explainable AI, XAI. I've never heard of that, where individuals inform how their data is being used. You ever see that, Dwight? I've never seen that. I've never even heard of that. I've never even heard of that.
I'm not familiar with the acronym, but that term explainability is yeah, just gonna keep coming up. So I think they're just kind of tackling it face on and kind of building that in from the outset, which is going to be important for privacy folks. But yeah, hopefully we'll hear more about it soon.
Any thoughts on that, Chris? I was like, yeah, I need to dig
Oh,
into
yeah,
that one.
straight facts.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
cool. I just ain't never seen it done, and which I think for me that's I always call that top of the pyramid stuff, where the regular companies are not doing that, the big guys are doing that. So the rest of that is identify the purpose for which personal identifiable information is to be processed. And this one, it kind of tricked me, includes information about the metadata about PII. So I thought the data about the data could be actually PII, location, where a person's at. So what's your thoughts on the last two on that, the P5 section?
I could see that being overlooked. What I like about it is that I think it is a good checklist, for if you're just coming in or if you want to kind of take your privacy notices to the next level. I like the way that they have this particular control laid out. Actually, the whole family, I think, is a good checklist for your privacy program. But yeah, this in particular, because we tend to think like, your privacy notice, once you got it up on the website, once it's done, it's done. But actually, it should be like a living document.
Chris, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Dwight kind of knocks it out of the park every single time. CIPP-US and CIPM.
Facts.
Yeah, I'm just glad to see all of this in here, and it's more thorough than I thought. Although you can also see where like the privacy framework would still be necessary because it's way more expansive. So
yeah, we're gonna
if that's even a word.
No, it is. We talked about that. Me and Dwight talked about it in my privacy stream, and I pulled about 4 or 5 slides. So we're gonna hit that in. And cool is, and I want everybody to kind of pay attention to this. I've been in the game in 20 years, but me going through these individual security families, I'm picking up a lot of stuff because number one, this is a newer family for revision 5, but that's how you really get into detail. That's how you really get in there. Shout out to my man Dwight and Chris. They're actually probably more fundamentally sound in privacy than me. He's got the certs. I've done a little bit about, but that's how you really become acquainted with the policies. Like me and Chris was talking about vestibules and man traps, because I've read them so many times. I knew they were in there. So once you go through these families, you just start remembering stuff. You be like, yeah, I've seen that. Then you could just go in there and find it and start reciting stuff, right? So people ask me how I know it. That's because I go through it like this, and this kind of makes you better, especially when you have a discussion with people. It's like, okay, what does that mean? What's your thoughts on that? So two is the only way you learn is start going through them the hard way. This makes it actually a little easier than actually reading the dry documentation sometimes. Let's go 6, system of records notice. For systems that process information that will be maintained in a privacy system of record, draft system of record notice in accordance with federal and state guidance. Submit new and significantly modified system of records notice to the Fed or the state. Publish system of records notice to the federal and state registry. Keep system record notice accurate and up to date and scoped in accordance with the policy. So a lot of times, federal and state, when you upgrade your privacy notice, sometimes depending on what federal agency using, you have to give them a report of your privacy records, kind of like your training records or any of your records. So I think that's kind of what they're hitting there. Then from an assessment standpoint, I'm like, okay, how do I assess that? What do I look at? So what's your thoughts on that, Dwight? Make sure I say his name right. I'm tired.
I think Chris was looking for you to go to him first this time.
Oh no, yeah. I'll change the order in the future now.
I'm teasing, but this is one we don't see in the private sector. I think it is an extinction. Like I could see it being a control of a control extinction of the previous control or control enhancement, where these government systems have to actually give a public notice as well. But I think one day in one of these streams, we need to just pull it up and see what some of these agencies are actually doing with our data. But that's what it's there for. It's there for the public to take a look at and scrutinize. And of course, it ain't gonna tell you, exactly what's going on, but it will give you some insight into what these agencies are doing and what type of data they're holding. And yeah, we do need as much oversight as we can get. So I'm glad that this exists.
What you need to do, Dwight, and we should make that is you should do a Freedom of Information Act on some government agencies and says, we want to see it. It's information, we pay taxes. We want to see your notice. Just start putting pressure on people. What's your thoughts on that, Chris? Start doing
I think we'll put it under Dwight's name over here.
Facts. I said he'll not be. And I pronounced it right that time too. I don't want none of that smoke. What's your thoughts on that, Chris? PBO getting out of line as usual.
Yeah, so kind of like Dwight was kind of going down, is this reminds me of like the public notice requirements, like when you update your privacy policy or otherwise, and just keeping your customers, your clients, the end users informed with it. It would be like the equivalent of what I kind of get out of this to an extent. One of the things I did also want to mention is that one of the enhancements for this talks about exemption rules. And so they do have some type of process. One of the points to submit to the Federal Register or otherwise is to ensure that it's in accordance with the law and regulations. So there's like an approval process of some sort, it seems. So, which I find kind of interesting as well. So then, somebody's double checking and making sure that, we're not like collecting all this citizens' data and then selling it off to, Taiwan, China, I guess. China, so
the cool thing, these are more for NIST, so they're more for federal systems and selling people's information. So that came out, which I thought was unique. So let's see what regime consent out of the way that saves a company from a ramification liability. That made me think a lot of times the white mention a lot of legal terms. So even though we're privacy and security, sometimes we got to ship that off to legal to get their sign off in. What's your thoughts on that, Dwight?
You gotta make friends with the legal team. Bring some donuts. Like they're really gonna, CYA as a service. So
Nah, that's part of their job.
you know, so yeah, I'm all for that.
Chris, you got any thoughts on that?
Nope.
Let's see. P7, specific categories of personally identified information. Apply federal state criteria for specific categories of or PII, personal identifier information. Organization apply any condition or protection that may be necessary for specific categories of PII information. These conditions may be required by law, executive order, directives, policies, standards, and guidelines. So for us, name with address, that's a different type of PI. The PI that makes me nervous when I see SSN, that's like the highest of the PI, right? So when you start doing SSN, so I think for me, those are the kind of the categories when I look at PI. And sometimes when I was working at the Department of Revenue, we had different categories of PI. Like this together with that is PI. SSN was a different level. So I think that's where the categorization comes in of that. What's your thoughts on that, Dwight?
For privacy folks, I think this is going to trigger you thinking about sensitive data and looking at those privacy laws, GDPR, CCPA, a lot of the new individual state laws and how they define sensitive data. All of them are a little bit different, but in general, it is going to be, you know, those individual factors, union membership, race, sexual orientation, those types of things that are that they're considering sensitive. So you want to have that implemented both at the personnel level, knowing who in your personnel is like, all right, we're already in an earlier control. We're talking about knowing who has access to PII, but now we're having a second level. This is almost like privileged access PII, where who's handling the sensitive data. So at the personnel level, but also at the system level, which systems are handling that particular types of data? Is it segregated? How is it handled? You want to be looking at that from a couple different angles so you can be able to report back on that and really have a clear vision about what's going on, why you're doing it, what's the purpose, and making sure that all of those steps that we discussed earlier, like consent, are in line with what you're actually doing with that processing.
And just real quick and we got the slide. We were talking about the AWS different services to protect you there. So from a cybersecurity, I got encryption, I got FIPS 142, I got tokenization. I'm gonna make you MFA, but I don't have any of that in categorization, right? I just protected it, right? So once again, I think that's the nuance going from security to privacy, right? I'm a protected, but is SSN a higher protection? Do I need to separate it? So from a categorization, like you said, is if we get a fine, they're going to ask us how are we doing categorization in those particular data elements. Once again, I think that's the nuance between security and privacy. Chime in on that, Chris.
Well, so one of the things I was actually going to ask you a question here. So I'm noticing that this entire family is not included on the baselines. So then, how does these federal agencies decide on which controls that they need to follow on here, or do they just?
No, if you go to number one, the agency will tell you. Once again, the IRS will tell you these are your base controls. But if you go to the NIST 800, we could do that after we go there. B, it's got low, medium, high. So if you're medium, which is most PI information because it's not life or death, the mediums will tell you which controls you need to do for being a medium control organization. Once again, IRS to say we want these medium, but we need these 3 or 4 highs. So the federal agency will tell you which controls you should do.
I think.
Yeah, I was kind of curious because they don't actually have a marked baseline for this family group.
Yeah, they keep them separate. They do keep them separate.
Yeah, because they were just even in 4 they were, like you said, they were a footnote in 4. At least we got them on there. So we bring up B and see if they're marked in B as moderate. Now that you mentioned them, I would just just do them all because they're moderate, and I think privacy
of course you would.
is coming up, and I'm a big boy, so let's do big security. So that's my thought pattern. But once again, if you're doing IRS or CJIS, which is FBI, they'll tell you which controls they want you to do. And to be honest, when I looked in, and we can bring them up, the IRS only did P1 and P2. They didn't do the rest of them. I'm pretty sure. I was shocked and dismayed. I might send them a note, Chris, like you said. I might have to send them a note, tell them the IRS we need to tighten up on that. You got more on that, Chris, before we hit up AB's question?
No, the only other thing I was going to note is just the fact that it also appears that there's overlap between these as well, which is not a bad thing whatsoever. We keep seeing this adheres to laws, regulations, policies regarding PII. So it's a good thing to see that throughout.
Yeah, the Fed's always going to have that because they always got executive orders. Then each agency can do an order. Then the FSMA 2014 for modernization, I have some guidelines and standards in there. So that's where you kind of need your policy, your legal with your privacy, because you got to read all those orders to make sure you get them in. The security families are pretty good now, especially the control enhancements, highlighting stuff that's in those orders, but you still have to review them to make sure you're following them all. And AB's thing is, I did notice California comes up frequently when it comes to consent. California is the 800-pound gorilla, and a lot of states are following California, which is following GDPR. So, yeah, you do see a lot of states referencing CCPA. What's your thoughts on that, Dwight?
When you read those privacy notices in it, it talks about California residents specifically. You kind of get the feeling like they don't care about anybody else, but that is because they're trying to originally only comply with CCPA, and like everybody else, like, oh no, we're not thinking about y'all. But yeah, so it's kind of a funny thing. But yeah, as these more and more laws come into effect, we'll start to see more states, and we'll start hearing about the nuances and which privacy law is business friendly, consumer friendly, and all of that. But yeah, for the time being, it will be GDPR and CCPA as the sort of standard bearer. So we'll keep hearing about those the most, and that's where I would start if you're just kind of learning these.
Yeah, CCPA. If you can do CCPA, that is going to cover 95% of the rest of the United States. I haven't seen any. Colorado's doing something. New York DFR is doing something a little nuanced, but Cali's the 800-pound gorilla in there.
And it's a good time to brush up on it because they got new amendments coming into effect. So things are updating, and there's continuous learning with this stuff. So stay on it.
Facts. Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it's just staying up to date with it. It's just going to get increasingly more demanding, and I feel like it's a field that's really opening up, and people are taking it more serious. Now, like, I find it kind of interesting because, especially in the United States, I feel like it's becoming increasingly more difficult to keep track of everything, especially for these companies who have people in different states and so forth. So then they have to comply with the CCPA or in Denver or so forth. So let's say all 50 states, let's even say 40 states make their own privacy laws. I mean, it could be difficult to keep track of all of that stuff. So I think it's going to be an interesting landscape.
Yeah, what I do is, and I try to map them out, and of course, and we talked about that when you're doing multiple compliances and multiple privacy standards. And usually it's done on internet. 95% of the time, the CCPA is going to be the most restrictive. So I just do CCPA. Then I believe that'll cover most of the states. Then usually somebody tell you these one-offs for these couple of states. So I usually do the most.
I was going to say.
So.
Yeah, as your third-party auditor comes in and is like, you only have CCPA compliance? What do you mean, PPO?
And I tell them it's the most restrictive. But go ahead.
I was going to ask Dwight, do you feel like at some point that it may just move to the federal level with some of the other stuff that's happening at that level on privacy? Because we already have a couple things.
No.
No, I don't either.
No.
I just don't feel like they can get it together with this incoming administration and all the things going on. It'll be I feel like they'll have some compliance issues. Maybe we might see a national law about children and teens related to privacy or something along those lines, but I doubt that we'll get, both sides of the aisle to come together on national privacy.
Yeah.
That is why I think in the privacy world, people are a little bit stressed out about these new laws because they're expecting a season of increased legislation. Not just that we have so many coming into effect this particular year, but also this legislative season is just going to be crazy with new proposals that people are going to be, pulling their hair out trying to track.
Yeah, the thing I worry about is when they talking about blowing CISA up. When they talking about dismantling CISA, because they were talking about, did that come up?
So,
A couple things, yeah.
yeah, so there's a couple different things out there, but yeah, so what? CISA's underneath Homeland Security, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah,
And so, like, CISA is really new, actually. Like,
it
I think
is.
it came about in like 2019 or 2020.
It is pretty new.
Yeah, so like, it's very surprising, especially in our space. But you have to also like, there's also, I mean, hundreds of other agencies. I don't remember it offhand, but there's a federal website that actually lists all the different agencies out there, and there's a lot of them. But like CISA, at least especially in our space for like cybersecurity, information security, they seem to be doing a lot of great stuff.
Mhm.
But they also use a lot of money because I think it was like $800 million or I'm sorry, $800 million or $1.8 billion that they ended up getting for funding. I'm gonna look it up real quick, but yeah, so there was a couple comments that were made about actually getting rid of CISA.
So I'm sure that's going
I
to.
don't think it'd happen.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot to wind down a government agency. I don't think you can do it in 4 years, but we're going to see. Now, shout out to AB. Yes, BBL blockchain is immutable and decentralized, but like Chris said, there's a couple other versions of it. What you said there.
2.8 billion for
Oh
CISA, by the
shit,
way.
that's a lot of money,
Yeah, that's
man.
how big they are
They talking
for
about,
their 2024.
they trying to get to 2 trillion. Like Dwight said, XI is providing clear justification regarding how AI makes decisions. I got to dig into that. That's more Dwight than me, though. I didn't know SI either. I just looking online, so he was looking up. Check out Tam, definitely from Women in Linux. Definitely go check out her channel, doing great things. So probably around June when I start getting into my Kubernetes, I'm gonna jump on their channel. They do a lot of Linux, a lot of everything, really talking about high paying jobs and different things. So shout out to Women in Linux, definitely over there supporting Tam. No, Dwight, we're not trying to set you up. We're trying to elevate you to the next level. Shout out to elevation.
Tinfoil hat.
Let's see. Well, the more work, maintain the records notice. Facts. Hey, everyone. Got caught up with my sister, but I'm here now. All good. Shout out to R Squared. No interesting categories. PI. Oh, true country. I'm barely doing the United States. I think Dwight's trying to go international, man. I'm barely doing the United States. I'm trying to go county to county. You talk about country. I'm trying to stay in the U.S. Any thoughts on that, Dwight, from the international standard of that?
Yeah, if you can't handle the states, don't go international. If you think you got a headache now, you know, that's a lot of countries come. I think India just came out in the last couple weeks. So
I tell you what I've been doing a lot of, because I'll be in the other part of the manosphere is I want to start doing stuff the continent, because Africa's coming out with a lot of privacies now. So people want me to do an African privacy stream. So I might do that. Chime in on that, Chris. EU follows GDPR, UK, then PIPA. I think Canada's PIPA. Am I saying that right?
PIPEDA, PIPEDA.
Yeah, I'm messing it up. So yeah, then India had theirs. I think Brazil, the country, had theirs. I had to look up Brazil for a contract years ago. I was working for a big vendor. They were doing some stuff in Brazil. They had their own privacy. So yeah, shout out to AWS. They actually have a privacy grid, because they got data centers in every part of the world. So each one of their data centers kind of focus on a particular privacy, so you can do it to make sure you cover. Any thoughts on that, Chris? The international? I'm just trying to focus on Fed work, man. I'm not trying to
Oh yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah,
okay.
I think the space is interesting enough, and certainly you could go into the international if you wanted to. But then the interesting thing around the privacy aspect is then you also have to like understand how their laws and jurisdictions work, and
Facts.
there's more to keep track of with that. And certainly it's possible to do, but ain't nobody got time for that except Dwight over here.
Yeah, just shout
He's
out
going to be
to
running some global companies' privacy compliance.
And that's the good and bad is global knowledge is good, but your job kind of possibly shrink because you're only doing global companies, right? So that kind of shrinks your, but they pay the best though, right? So there's plus and minus to that. Shout out to our square. I keep seeing a lot of compliance position starting to pop up in Columbia, South Carolina. She means AKA state jobs. So that's it. Chris talked about that 2 point. Man, that's a big budget, man. I guess I didn't think they were that big. Your search for place before CISA, I think. Let's see. Trying to get down there. Let's see. Texas. Oh, yep. Brazil. Yep. LGBT. Yeah, I was looking those up for some. Shout out to Mike V. He the one got me thinking about doing privacy in the continent. Shout out to Mike V. He's I don't call him a Pan-Africanist, but he's more international guy. He's in the continent, so he's got me thinking about. And I had I probably had 20 people from the continent reach out to me and ask me privacy questions, like I would know them. So I'm thinking about definitely do some African streams. Definitely bring my man Mike V up. Let me drop the link if Mike V wants to come up. Anybody can come up, but shout out to my man Mike V. Like I said, we were talking about the continent. I'm usually U.S. focused too much, I think. India. Let's see. He got India in there. So many benefits for both of us. India's PDB draws from GDPR. Yep. So let's go through these last couple slides. And this is kind of what I'm going to be doing in my course. That's Chris's look. He helped me modernize my slides. I was looking like I was from 2005 at first. So PBO trying to get a little better out here, getting a little better. P8 computer matching requirements. I thought this was interesting. When a system or organization processes information from the purpose of conducting a matching program, obtaining approval from the Data Integrity Board. I've never seen a Data Integrity Board. Develop and enter into a computer matching agreement, publishing a matching notice in the Federal Registry, independently verify information produced by the matching program before taking adverse action against an individual, provide individuals notice and an opportunity to contest the findings before taking adverse action against an individual. I need to dig in that a little more. What's your thoughts on that, Dwight? Let me take that out.
No, and the way this one is written is it feels like there was a lawsuit or somebody got into some trouble about this computer matching thing. But what it makes me think about is we talked about, considering what the different types of data, those different categories and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk a lot in these controls about the types of processing or the implications of some of those processing. And so this is a very sort of specific instance that I'm not particularly familiar with. And I don't think a lot of people will be, but starting to think, using that to start to think about, okay, does my processing have some type of life-changing implication, especially when we come to talk about AI systems and profiling and bias, or like, are we deciding whether or not to give somebody a mortgage or something along those lines? That is something that should be flagged as sort of high risk, even though it may not have come up in a previous control. Like, it may not have been flagged as sensitive data. We should also be flagging, certain types of processing. And in this particular case, matching may fall into that category. If if you're saying somebody is using resources in this particular federal system, and then so you're going to deny them because they're getting whatever benefits elsewhere, and then it turns out it's another PBO in another state. It's like you're in trouble, and I think that's kind of the origin of this.
And just talk about D, we were just talking about putting on blockchain, independently verify the information produced by the matching program before taking adverse action against an individual. Like you say, cutting them off some programs or doing something negatively, and to do it. So how do you independently verify it? Right? Are you looking at it independent, or what are you doing to verify that? I guess. What's your take on that, Chris?
Yeah, like my key takeaway on it is, the fairness for automated systems. So, yeah, just like Dwight was kind of saying, is this one's very legalese. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much that. Like, it's neat and everything else. But
I'm gonna have to dig in that a little more myself. I got the matching. I'm a little fuzzy on that. And two is, and that's one thing that the federal agency, just because it's fair, they assume your department's big. I'm like, they have more boards, a system control board. Now we got a data integrity board, right? So that's a super specific skill set, or putting people, we're actually in charge of your data from a privacy standpoint. And I think that's new from this particular family. But once again, when I looked at the IRS part, they stopped at -2. They didn't even go to the rest of it. So I think they're trying to grow into the rest of it from a privacy standpoint.
Yeah.
This also makes me think about re-identification issues. If a data broker or someone, even if they've got anonymous data, but you match it to another system's data or something along those lines. Like basically when you're, combining different types of data is also something that it's PII data. Like that's something that we should be flagging.
Yeah, sometimes if you're in a small enough town or smaller, I can't even spell it. You try to do a anonymize on a person, you can figure them out because there's not a lot of data points in a small town, right? So you can
Zip code and last name, you got them.
Yeah. So that's something I think from a matching standpoint and drilling down is definitely definitely an issue. Yeah, I reach out to you, Mike V. Let's see. Shout out to my man, Casual Economist. Definitely one of the day ones. Hope you feeling better. Around the time about, I would think either would be better for you. Trying to get Chris to a warmer site. Shout out to Chris.
Oh, yeah.
He's in a financial friendly area though. Question for PPO: might ask who Daryl is, your mentor. Can I connect with him? He's so old. He's not even on YouTube. Or I'll reach out to him. He's old. I'll be 60, man. He's 15 years. He's 75. He's 75. Then my big homie Jan, he's 10 years older than me, so he's 65. He's about to retire. But I'll reach out to him. Those guys are super private, but I'll see if I can open them up to my network. Those dudes are super private, man. But no, those are guys that my big homies when I'm doing something exotic or trying to do something I shouldn't do, I reach out to them guys. They tell me, don't do it. I'm not excited. Facts. Let's see, my man. Data acquisition, transition, return. Oh, facts. So all of those are in there.
You should get him on for an interview.
Which one?
Daryl.
Yeah. Well, he worked for my man, David Stewart, one of the big federal contractors, consulting companies. 57 benefits. Oh yeah, I just don't think we're gonna get there from a federal standpoint. Let's see, it's terrible for pay for. Is it? I thought that would pay because that research triangle's over there, so I thought the pay would be a little better. Oh, we're ending it up. These are the 8 we went over, so you see it. So this is one we did, and this is just a data flow diagram where you see P is the PI. So we need to be able to track it through systems, track it through processing, track it through notice. each one of those data warehouse, lakes, operation, the dashboard and reporting tools. You see API in there. A lot of times you can export those in the spreadsheets. I would block those, but just kind of thinking from the data flow and all the things we just talked about. Any Dwight, you got any comment on that?
Nope, just still trying to get used to looking at these, man. It still still hurts my eyes.
Yeah, a lot of times too is I would take that and I probably would synthesize a little better for the privacy people to look at that, because I think from a privacy standpoint, I don't know, would you want to know the flow of the data, or would you just want to know where it was at and making sure we had our privacy notice and the processing we're processing?
Yeah,
Would you want
I
to know? Would you want to know the data flow from a privacy standpoint?
I think it kind of comes back to that. I think it was PT2 purpose, where a data map is really helpful. You might not need to know all the systems and, too specific about what it's doing, but knowing where it's going, where it's located, who's touching it, I think is maybe some of the bigger concerns, and then how we're managing, consent and um, data subject access requests, DSARs.
And if you look at the side, I think they put their users like data warehouse, the data scientists is over there with their little people. So they kind of show you what roles and responsibilities, which will show you who's touching what and kind of where. So that's kind of just, I think I would clean it up a little bit, but that's a really good diagram. I think especially from a GRC perspective, I would try to say, okay, do we know who's touching it, what rows are touching it? Then I can go to the database or the AIM inside of AWS that says, show me all the financial users, show me all the risk users, show me all the operational users. Then two is, like we said, in that dashboard reporting, is it showing SSN, and do they need to see SSN because it's on that screen, right? So we can start drilling down and kind of looking at data elements from that particular perspective. You want to chime anything on that before we go? So yeah, this is kind of, like you said, it needs to be some about it's giving me a headache. Shout out to R Squared. I need
That
glasses
might be its
too.
purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say I have glasses and it's not helping. So yeah, I think that's great. And yeah, I mean, this is awesome to just break it down really quick and went through all of those controls right there. One of the only things I would also add in there is that you mentioned the 53B for more information on it. And then also those enhancements too give a lot more context and information. So yeah, but I'm actually gonna hop off now. So it's already like 2 hours after my bedtime. But
my bad.
oh no, you're fine, Vimeo. After hours.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, man. Always great insight. We wrapping up, but Mr. Whitlock got to go to bed. We're gonna see you tomorrow at 7:30 and study GRC. Where were you at, young man? I got up. Where are you at?
On Thursday.
Is it Thursday? Okay, I thought it was every day, man. I don't put too much pressure on.
It might be at this point, to be honest. But yeah, GRC Mafia. Thank you, P.
All good, man. I'll see you. I thought this was good. We just talked about the GDPR, CCPA, and kind of where they come together and the overlap on that. You got anything on that? Like I said, I'm barely doing the United States, but go ahead.
Yeah, for US folks, I would highly recommend getting to the IAPP website and looking at their report on state laws, because they have some great charts in there, and they do have a chart that covers those rights that we see sort of in the middle of this particular diagram. So you can actually see, those new state laws are definitely going to be including those. They might not include all of them. Some of them might not include the right to correct it. And so there's some funny things like that when it does come around to amend it, that might end up being amended. So you can't always take it for granted. So I would really recommend people look at those charts. The good thing about IAPP is they do update those reports. So I don't know how long ago it came out. I think it's pretty up to date for 2024, and I think they might have included the new laws for 2025. So it's not it's not out of date yet, so get it while it's hot.
Are they available, or you got to be a member to get them?
I I'm not sure if it's available to the public. I'm
Okay.
guessing it is. But if not, I'm sure you can find it somewhere. It's not for sale or anything, but I usually download it as a member, so I'm not sure if it's if
Okay.
you can get it without it.
So yeah, I might try to find take that one out, put some more state appropriate, or put another style. This is kind of what we were talking about when we were going through those security families and enhancements: data minimization, transparency, right to know, consent, data access, and portability. So that kind of gives you the definition, question, organizational capability. So this is kind of one of the grids I like to use, especially because I'm more of a security person and not a privacy person. So it kind of lets me look at the high level things we need to be hidden for that. So, which I struggle with. Your take on any of that?
Yeah, I think it's a good way to, especially that question row, asking good questions about some of
Mhm.
these complicated issues like consent. Do I collect consent about data collection and usage from customers and employees? When we talk about employee privacy, that's a whole other specialty and concern, and it's got all these related laws, Fair Credit Reporting Act, and everything that's going on with it. So it's like a beast in itself, just talking about employee data. So yeah, I think this is a nice little chart to get you brainstorming.
And I think the families, like you said, I think those would be probably in the enhancements part of those to drill down a little more. But once again, I'm just kind of surprised, and this kind of dug down a little deeper inside that control family created. Then some of the stuff we also talked about: data accuracy, data security is kind of where I'm at. Data breach notification, right to delete, and right to opt out. Right, some more additional controls, and a lot of times those were in the security families we were just looking at.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking at that. I'm focusing in on that metadata management. When we
Oh yeah,
talking data governance again. And really trying to track and everything. And then it's it's great to say like, hey, we give people the right to delete. We give people the right to access. We give people the right to rectify or amend their data. But the actual implementation of that is a lot more complicated, and then even when you are deleting somebody's data, we do need some sort of metadata there to even to say like, oh, this person's data has been deleted previously, or this is the justification, or this particular person's data couldn't be deleted because of a legal hold or a public interest or some other sort of justification. So it it does get more complicated than just getting your data guy to go in there and just hit delete a couple times,
it's
hit
funny.
backspace a couple times.
Yeah, I used to do purview inside Office 365. So it's funny you mentioned that. I just put legal holds on stuff. I didn't even think about that. Because people think they be deleting and you got legal hold on them. It's like, nah, buddy, we're in a lawsuit, so we can't let you delete anything. You can't see it. It's marked for delete, but we holding it, right? So what does that look like on the other side? I didn't even think about that. That's a nice. So the legality of us being in a lawsuit stops you from correcting your data and deleting your data? Is that what we're saying, or is that a legal question? I don't even know what that looks like.
Yeah, if there's some sort of ongoing litigation that keeps you from deleting, let's say a class action or
Yeah.
anything along those lines where you pretty much got a freeze on all of that data is kind of what we're looking for. But there's other justifications, like you get these rights, but in each of those laws, you are gonna have, some cutouts for where companies can push back and say, "Hey, we need to hold on this data for this particular use.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes, we need to be able to have this particular data to provide you with services." So
Hmm.
while you have until your package arrives in 5 days, you can't delete that data right
No,
now.
no, that's true.
So yeah, there's things like that. It isn't so simple as, like I say, it's not just some guy in a room hitting backspace on all your data, there's a lot of considerations that need to go into it.
Right, because we gotta you hired us to do a service, so for us to complete your service, we need this data. Unless until we, like you said, complete that service, then all right, it could be something a little different. Yeah, that's this kind of portal we were talking about, where you got your privacy portal, then your policy management, your policies, where it's got data minimization, data retention. Then you see company values, regulations of that rolls up to your policies. Then who, people data, who can do what, who can delete, who can mark for the delete, right there, who consent and management repository. Then that consent gives you data governance capabilities, roles and responsibilities, data lineage, data quality. We just talked about that metadata management. My part, data security and access from the data governance standpoint. So, what would that look like in your org from that and portal, or how do you give people access to do that type of work? So, what's your thoughts on that?
Man, I thoughts and prayers. If you are doing this without some sort of system or something, I call it commando. I know that is not um,
No, that's
a term for for everybody,
no. I'm
but
with you.
if you're looking at a spreadsheet trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing with somebody's data, I feel bad for the users and I feel bad for you too because it is it is a landmine.
I
So
need
yeah, you want to have some systems, and this is going to be similar to what we see in some of these GRC tools and stuff, where you really see it's like a pretty competitive marketplace of different tools with all these. They're trying to put all these features into one
mm-hmm.
particular thing, and so privacy tools are definitely a thing. If you can't get access to those IPP reports like we were talking about, look at some of these privacy tools because one of the ways that they're keeping folks interested and getting the attention of privacy professionals is they're also putting out helpful reports and
Mm-hmm.
helping you summarize the particular laws, helping talk about how their tools might streamline consent management and what a cookie system might look
Mm-hmm.
like that does keeps you out of trouble from dark patterns and things like that. So definitely take a look at Datagrail, Asano, OneTrust, all of these folks, and IAPP. Ironically enough, they used to do a report of all of the different companies, and there were so many of them. I think they kind of gave up on the report, but
Oh wow.
there are a lot of companies, and this, like I said, same way we see in the security field, where
Mm-hmm.
whoever's gonna streamline your GRC task, uh, there's hundreds of companies that want to do that.
I need to look at usually Gartner has a quadrant, and usually they rank the top software for particular things. I might go out there and see if they have a quadrant for the privacy software. And then we did this stream. These are some of the AWS tools that help you with privacy. We're not going to go over them, but AWS tries to give you a ton of services, then how to lock down those services to kind of help you with privacy. So I think that was kind of it. See if there's
That's
any.
plenty.
Yeah, I know. I'm running out of steam. Like I said, we're gonna hang out and answer a couple more questions, and we're gonna shut it on down. I want to appreciate everybody for joining me. Shout out to Larry. Let's see what he got. Just got back. I heard Professor pulling a 3 hour shift. That is incorrect. PBO running out of gas. PBO had a rough day. I got to get it together. But no, it was just interesting, Brahma Man, Dwight up and Chris, because that's NIST privacy security family. Not for them, I thought they did a great job. I just got to figure out who's gonna who they're forcing to implement that. Like I said, so far the IRS is only doing PT1 and PT2. So I thought that was real interesting from them from an IRS standpoint. And two, like it's helping me become familiar with detail. And we're not even going to the enhancements yet. I was going to do that in another video. I'm just trying to get my foot in the water with the different security families. And this is definitely one of the newer families they try to expand on. And I guess lock down that privacy part from from a NIST 800-53 standpoint. So anything else you want to leave the audience with before we shut them down? I guess I'm about to.
No, I think that is a ton of topics, a lot of interesting stuff. We try to grab some news articles and, make it sort of living so that some of these topics jump out a little bit more because it can be pretty sleepy stuff. But yeah, I'm glad to see it getting more recognition and, people in the chat asking questions and folks trying to dissect it a little bit more. I, like we talked about, is some people still on revision 4. So you jump into revision 5 and you're like, oh no, now I got to do privacy too. I think people will realize like, oh, okay, this, you kind of sit up in your chair like, oh, okay, the this is serious stuff, like the fines and the implications and the reputational responsibility, the implications for just user trust and all of that, I think are pretty concerning. And so it's great to see these implemented right next to the rest of the rest of 853.
And the other part about that, I think you're thinking of it a little wrong. I always think I understand revision 4, so me adding on privacy is just a small part, right? For me, so I tell people you gotta stack your skills. So I was super comfortable in R4. I'm getting super comfortable in R5. So for me, just adding privacy, I'm comfortable with the rest of it. So they upgraded risk assessment, supply chain. I want to say this kind of the 3 they kind of focused on. They didn't take much out. So for me, and 2 is, once again, I think privacy is definitely playing a more part. So just adding security, governance, risk, and compliance. And the next part I think of that is privacy, right? And that'll make you a well-rounded GRC person, security person. So you start thinking kind of more closer to a management level when you start dealing with privacy, because it's about processing the data, but how are you processing the data, marking the data, right to know about the data, right? So it's just not the processing of it. So I think that's the unique start of that. So,
and these AI implications and these state laws are putting the pressure on, I think. So yeah, it's a good time to level up on it.
Crazy thing, hell, we can't do basic security, man. Now we try to throw AI, like, man, we barely doing R4, man. Now you try AI, do throw privacy on there, like, dude, we ain't gonna never make it. We gonna be struggling. But two is though hackers are getting better. Like you said, there's more, and especially with AI, the phishing and the whaling and that part of social engineering. AI makes it a hell. I could take your voice and try to trick accounting and sending me a check, right? So with the deep
Forget
fakes,
your voice. We can take your whole likeness. We can have
facts.
you can have a video call with fake PBO and
No, true.
get some account numbers.
No, that's 100% true. That's 100% true. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank my man Dwight for joining us. I had to get him on the channel because it's his kind of area of expertise. So I definitely want to get him on. I'm out. Everybody have a good night. PBO about to go to bed. I don't know what my monitor's doing, but I appreciate everybody for joining me. I'm out. Have a good night. Thanks for joining me.